It was supposed to be just a regular evening, a small family dinner to celebrate an anniversary. But something happened that night. Something that changed everything. I had always considered myself a patient man, not one for wild assumptions or letting my imagination get the better of me. I was the kind of guy who trusted the people around me, who believed in stability and loyalty. That's how I was raised. My life, until that night, had been about order and routine. And our anniversary dinner? It was supposed to be a celebration of that very routine. I had prepared for it the way I always did, calmly, methodically. The food, the drinks, the guests. Everything was planned out. The table was set, the candles were lit, and the music was playing softly in the background. We even had her parents and siblings there, her mother, her brother, and his girlfriend. I had no reason to feel anything but calm and content. But that evening, there was something in the air. Something that made me uneasy in ways I couldn't fully explain. It started innocently enough. People were mingling, glasses were clinking, and conversations flowed easily. The night was exactly what it was supposed to be, a celebration of years spent together, a reaffirmation of bonds. But as the evening wore on, I started to feel it. This subtle shift, like a storm gathering on the horizon. It was almost imperceptible at first. Just a glance here, a laugh there. A touch that lingered a little too long. And yet, something about it felt wrong. Every time I looked across the room, I could feel this undercurrent of tension that no one else seemed to notice. Elise, my wife, was talking animatedly with her brother, and I couldn't help but watch them. It wasn't the first time they'd shared a conversation, but tonight, something felt off. It was the way she tilted her head, the way she laughed. There was a familiarity in her gaze that I couldn't ignore, a comfort that seemed too intimate for a casual conversation. But I shook it off. I had no reason to feel like this. It was probably nothing. I couldn't afford to let my mind run wild. That's when I excused myself, deciding to step outside for a breath of fresh air. I wasn't exactly feeling claustrophobic, but there was something about the confines of the house that made me restless. I needed a break from the sounds, the laughter, the chatter. Outside, the cool night air was a welcome relief. The sky was a deep shade of blue, the stars faint in the distance. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through messages, trying to distract myself, but my mind kept returning to what was happening inside. My wife, her brother, their connection. I stood there for a while, my thoughts a tangle of doubt and suspicion. The longer I stood outside, the more I felt like I needed to see them again, to reassure myself that I wasn't imagining things. I took a few steps closer to the house, closer to the back window. The lights were low, but I could still see the outlines of people through the glass. And that's when I saw it. Elise and her brother were sitting together on the couch, the others scattered around the room. But it wasn't the seating arrangement that caught my attention. It was their bodies, positioned just a little too close, just a little too intimate. Her arm brushed his, and instead of pulling away, he leaned in a bit closer, his face lingering in her space. I watched, frozen, as my heart sank. They were laughing, but it was a different laugh, a shared moment of understanding, a private joke. It wasn't just friendly. It wasn't just sibling bonding. There was something more to it, something I wasn't prepared to confront. My eyes were glued to the window now, my breath shallow, my pulse quickening. Elise looked so at ease with him, so comfortable. Her gaze softened in a way I had never seen before. For a moment, I thought I was just being paranoid. After all, they were family. But then it happened. Her brother reached over and placed his hand on hers. A soft touch, but a touch that lingered. She didn't pull away. She didn't seem uncomfortable. They were looking at each other in a way that I couldn't understand. It wasn't the way siblings looked at each other. It wasn't the way families should look at each other. I had seen enough. My heart raced as I stepped back from the window, my mind spinning with questions. Was I seeing things? Was I overreacting? But no. Something in my gut told me what I had just witnessed was real. And in that moment, my world shifted. The life I thought I knew, this safe, stable existence I had spent so many years building, felt like it was crumbling before my eyes. I could feel the weight of it, the reality of what I had seen, of what it implied. I didn't know what to do next, but I knew one thing for sure. Nothing was ever going to be the same again. I stayed outside for what felt like hours, my mind a whirlpool of conflicting thoughts. I couldn't believe what I had seen, and yet I couldn't shake the image from my head. It played over and over in my mind, that lingering touch, that soft gaze between Elise and her brother. It wasn't just a casual moment. It was intimate, and as much as I wanted to deny it, deep down, I knew that something was wrong. Something was horribly wrong. The world around me seemed to fade as I stood there, disconnected from everything. I didn't know what to do next. Part of me wanted to march inside, burst through the door, and demand answers. But another part of me, a much quieter, more fearful part, held me back. What was I even going to say? How could I accuse them of something so vile, based on one moment, one glance? But that one glance had shattered something in me. It was like a crack in the foundation of my life, and now I couldn't ignore it. I turned to look at the house behind me, half expecting Elise to come rushing out to check on me. She knew how I was when I got lost in my thoughts, how I needed space to process. But tonight, I felt disconnected, almost as though the world inside that house no longer belonged to me. It wasn't just her brother's touch. It was the entire way they interacted, the shared glances and quiet moments that felt more like a secret than a family bond. After what seemed like an eternity, I made my way back to the house. The back door was still open, and I could hear laughter and clinking glasses from inside. I stood there for a moment, not sure what I was hoping for. But I wasn't ready to confront them, not yet. Elise noticed me first, of course. She always did. She came outside with a gentle smile on her face, her blonde hair cascading around her shoulders. The woman I had fallen in love with. But something was off about her smile. There was a layer of tension there, a flicker of something I couldn't quite place. She asked if I was okay, if I was enjoying the evening. Her voice was soft, like it always was when she was trying to soothe me, but tonight, it felt empty. "I'm fine," I said, forcing a smile I didn't feel. I didn't know how to explain what had happened. How could I even begin to? "You don't seem fine," she pressed, looking at me with those big blue eyes that used to calm me. Now, all I saw was distance. "What's going on? You've been out here for a while." I could feel my heart pounding, but I didn't want to let on just how deeply I was shaken. "Just needed a break, that's all." The house was getting a little crowded. She nodded, still watching me closely. Too closely. I had never noticed how sharp her gaze could be before. How calculated. "Are you sure?" she asked again, her tone gentle but insistent. I could feel her probing, but I wasn't ready to give in. "Yeah, just tired, I guess. Nothing to worry about." She hesitated, but then smiled and put a hand on my arm. "Okay, well, if you need anything, let me know." Her touch felt like a lie. It was the same gesture I had seen 100 times before, but tonight, it didn't comfort me. Instead, it made me feel colder, like a stranger in my own life. I watched her walk back inside, the sound of the door closing softly behind her, and I was left standing there in the dark. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that what I had seen was a mistake, that I was just being paranoid. But every instinct in my body told me it wasn't. Something was happening between her and Charlie, and I had seen it with my own eyes. The evening continued on inside, but I stayed outside for as long as I could. I needed to think. I needed to make sense of what was going on before I did something I might regret. I wasn't the kind of person to lash out in anger, but everything inside me was screaming for confrontation. Finally, I couldn't take it any longer. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I walked back inside, trying to compose myself. Elise and her brother were still sitting together, chatting with the rest of the family, but I couldn't focus on their conversation. My mind was elsewhere, consumed by what I had seen. I made my way toward the kitchen, where her mom was standing, chatting with a few others. I pretended to be normal, to be engaged in the conversation, but my mind was a million miles away. I couldn't stop glancing over at Elise and Charlie, who now seemed to be in some private world of their own. Their eyes met across the room, and it was like I wasn't even there. The tension in my chest grew unbearable, and I couldn't stand it anymore. I excused myself again and walked outside once more, this time with purpose. I needed space. I needed to think, but more than that, I needed to figure out what I was going to do. I couldn't just ignore it. I couldn't pretend I hadn't seen what I had seen. As I stood there, looking up at the dark sky, my thoughts were racing. Was this just a moment of weakness for them, or was it something deeper? Something I hadn't been able to see until now? My instincts told me that this wasn't just a slip-up. It was something calculated, something that had been building up for a long time. I knew I couldn't let this go, but I also knew that confronting them would tear apart the life I had known. I wasn't ready for that, but I had to find the truth, no matter how ugly it was. The night stretched on, but but it felt like time had stopped altogether. I couldn't escape the sinking feeling that had lodged itself deep in my chest. The world around me seemed to blur, and my thoughts were spinning faster than I could process them. I wanted answers. I needed them. But how could I confront them? How could I tear apart the fabric of my marriage, of my family, without knowing the full truth? I kept walking through the backyard, my feet moving aimlessly over the grass, the cold night air doing nothing to shake the rising tide of panic. I tried to calm myself, to find a way to make sense of what I had seen. But every time I closed my eyes, all I could see was the image of Elise and Charlie. Too close, too familiar, too comfortable in a way that made my stomach turn. I wanted to believe it was a mistake, a fleeting moment that didn't mean anything. But deep down, I knew better. There was something in the air tonight. Something shifting, like the ground beneath me was giving way. And it was starting to dawn on me. I wasn't just the person who had witnessed this moment. I wasn't just an observer of the lie. I was a part of it, whether I liked it or not. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how many times I had ignored the little things, those subtle signals that something wasn't quite right. All the times Elise seemed a little too distracted, a little too evasive when I asked about her day. All the times Charlie seemed to be around just a little too much, always offering to help, always there when I wasn't. I had brushed it off, assuming it was nothing. After all, who would suspect their own wife and brother-in-law of something like this? I couldn't stop asking myself, how long had this been going on? Was it recent? Or had it started long before tonight? The questions twisted inside my mind, but there was no answer. Only uncertainty. The sound of the back door creaking open pulled me out of my thoughts, and I turned to see Elise standing there. Her expression was unreadable, and for a moment, I wondered if she knew what I was thinking. She stepped outside and walked toward me, her footsteps soft against the grass. "Julian," she said, her voice tentative, almost uncertain. "Are you all right?" I tried to swallow the lump in my throat, but it felt like I was choking on my own words. "I'm fine. Just needed some space," I replied, keeping my voice steady, though my insides were anything but. She came closer, her eyes searching mine as if trying to read me, to figure out what was going on inside my head. For a moment, I felt the weight of her gaze, the closeness that had once felt so comforting, but now felt like a heavy burden. Her presence, which had always been a source of safety, now seemed like a reminder of the uncertainty that hung between us. "I've noticed you've been distant tonight," she said, her voice still soft, but there was an edge to it. "Is it something I said?" I could feel the lie forming on my lips, the words I had rehearsed in my mind. "No, nothing like that." But the words didn't come. Instead, I found myself looking at her, really looking at her, for the first time in a long time. Her beauty, the way she held herself, the way she spoke, it had all been familiar, but tonight it felt foreign. I didn't know who she was anymore, and I hated myself for that. "You're lying," I finally said, the words coming out before I could stop them. Her eyes widened slightly, a flicker of confusion crossing her face. "What do you mean?" I could hear the hesitation in her voice, the uncertainty. I could feel the wall between us grow taller with every second. I didn't want to confront her like this. Not in the backyard, not with her family inside. But the truth felt like it was suffocating me. The truth that I had seen what I had seen. "Don't act like you don't know," I said, my voice low but firm. "I saw it, Elise. I saw you with Charlie." Her face went pale, and for a split second, I saw the guilt in her eyes before she quickly masked it with confusion. "What do you mean? I don't. Don't lie to me," I snapped, the anger rising in me, sharp and uninvited. "I saw the way you two were looking at each other. The way he touched you. Don't try to pretend like it didn't happen." For a long moment, there was silence between us. I could hear the distant laughter from inside, the sound of her family unaware of the storm brewing just outside. Elise didn't speak, and the seconds stretched into what felt like hours. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "Julian, you don't understand." "I don't understand," I interrupted, my voice rising. "I don't understand what, exactly? That my wife is having an affair with her brother? Is that what you're trying to tell me?" The words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. Elise took a step back, her face a mask of shock and disbelief. "What? No. No, Julian, it's not like that." I could feel my chest tightening, my breath shallow. "Then what is it? What the hell is it?" I was no longer sure what I was asking. I didn't care about the details anymore. All I wanted was the truth. She shook her head slowly, her eyes filling with tears, but they weren't the tears of guilt or regret I expected. No, they were the tears of someone who was terrified of being found out. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but the words never came. Instead, she just stared at me, her silence screaming louder than any confession could. I stood there, waiting for her to explain, to tell me something that would make sense of everything. But the longer we stood in that silence, the more I realized that there was no explanation, no justification. The truth was right there, staring me in the face. And then, just as I was about to say something else, I heard a voice behind me. "Is everything all right out here?" I turned around quickly, my heart racing. Charlie was standing there, just a few feet away, his face unreadable. He must have heard us talking, must have sensed the tension. His eyes flickered between Elise and me, and for the first time, I saw something in his gaze that sent a chill down my spine. Something that looked almost guilty. I had always thought of myself as someone who could handle anything, who could face the truth, no matter how painful. But in that moment, as Charlie stood there, staring at me with an expression I couldn't place, I realized just how fragile everything I believed in had become. My heart was pounding, and every part of me wanted to scream, to demand answers. But there was something in the way Charlie looked at me, something that held me back. For a brief moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us felt thick, suffocating. Elise, standing beside me, was still silent, her eyes avoiding both of ours. I could feel her tension radiating, a mix of guilt and fear, but she didn't speak. The silence stretched on, and I felt like I was sinking deeper into a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. Charlie shifted his weight, his hands in his pockets, trying to appear casual. But I saw it. His eyes darted toward Elise for a split second, the same way they had done inside earlier. A brief flicker of something I couldn't quite place, passed between them, and I felt my blood run cold. My suspicion, the one I had been pushing away for so long, suddenly felt like a heavy weight pressing down on me. "Is everything okay, Julian?" Charlie's voice was smooth, too smooth, almost as if he were trying too hard to sound casual. But I could hear the edge in it, a nervousness that only made the situation worse. I took a step forward, closer to him, my fists clenched at my sides. My head was spinning, and all I could focus on was the betrayal I could feel, hanging thick in the air. I had to know the truth. I couldn't pretend anymore. "Don't play dumb, Charlie," I said, my voice shaking with anger and disbelief. "I know what's going on. I saw you and Elise. I saw everything." His eyes flickered with something, regret, fear, maybe even guilt, but it was quickly masked by a false calm. "You're mistaken," he replied, his voice firm but not as convincing as he probably hoped. "There's nothing going on, Julian. You've misunderstood." I could feel my jaw tightening, my fists trembling. The nerve of him. The way he was standing there, looking me in the eye and lying so easily. How could he do this? How could he stand there and pretend like everything was normal, like I hadn't seen them together, like I wasn't about to lose everything I had ever known? I didn't misunderstand anything. I spat, stepping even closer to him. "You and my wife. I don't know how long it's been happening, but I know it's real. I saw the way you looked at each other, the way you touched her." My words were coming out faster now, uncontrollably. The anger, the hurt, the confusion, it was all pouring out of me. "You can't lie to me. Not anymore." Charlie didn't flinch. He just stood there, his face carefully composed. I could see the muscles in his jaw tighten, but his eyes never wavered. "You're wrong," he said again, his voice colder this time. "There's nothing happening. Elise and I are family. You're letting your imagination run wild." I wanted to scream, to throw everything I had at him, every ounce of hurt, of betrayal, of anger. But I couldn't. I was paralyzed, caught between the man I thought I knew and the truth that was slowly unraveling before me. I turned to Elise, my eyes searching hers. She was standing there, silent, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her face was pale, but there was something else in her expression, something unreadable. She didn't speak, didn't try to defend herself or Charlie. It was like she was trapped in her own silence, a silence that screamed louder than any words could. "Elise," I said softly, my voice cracking as I looked at her, my heart breaking all over again. "Is this true? Tell me, please. Is this really happening?" For the first time that night, she looked at me, really looked at me. But her eyes were empty, hollow. She didn't seem to recognize me anymore. She started, her voice barely a whisper. Julian, I didn't want you to find out like this. I didn't want to hurt you. I felt the air leave my lungs. It was like everything I had ever known, everything I had ever believed about her, was collapsing in an instant. The woman I had trusted, the woman I had built a life with, was standing in front of me, confessing her guilt without saying a word. I didn't need her to say anything more. The silence between us was enough. It was all I needed to hear. My legs felt weak beneath me. My knees nearly gave out, and I stumbled, trying to steady myself. I didn't know where to go, what to do. I had never felt more alone in my life. Elise and Charlie were standing there, in front of me, and yet I felt like I was on the edge of some precipice, about to fall into a void I couldn't escape. Why? I asked, my voice barely audible, the word escaping me in a breathless whisper. Why would you do this? After everything? Elise looked at me, her face a mixture of sorrow and shame. I never meant for it to happen this way. It just happened, and I didn't know how to stop it. She shook her head, a tear slipping down her cheek. I'm sorry, Julian. I truly am. But I don't know how to fix this now. A cold knot formed in the pit of my stomach. I was trapped between the woman I thought I knew and the realization that everything I thought was real was a lie. I turned away from them both, unable to look at them any longer. The weight of the moment was suffocating, and I couldn't breathe. I needed to get out. I needed to leave. Julian. Elise called after me, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. I had to get away, to escape from this nightmare that had become my reality. My mind was reeling, but I knew one thing for sure. Nothing would ever be the same. I didn't even know where I was going. My legs moved almost on their own, carrying me away from the scene, from the house, from everything that had just shattered in an instant. The night air hit my face like a slap, but I couldn't feel it. My body was numb, as if the world around me had suddenly become too surreal to register. I had always thought I was prepared for the worst. But this was beyond anything I could have imagined. I stumbled down the street, not caring where I was going or how I looked. The adrenaline had worn off, leaving only a hollow emptiness that seemed to swallow me whole. My mind kept replaying the conversation, Elise's tears, Charlie's cold indifference. The way they both stood there, looking at me like they had no idea how much they had broken me. I couldn't understand it. How could they betray me like this? How had it all happened right under my nose, without me even seeing it? The image of Charlie's calm face as he lied to me burned into my brain. That false sense of control, the way he had pretended nothing was wrong, even as everything around him was crumbling. And Elise, my wife, the woman I trusted more than anyone else, had stood there, silent, offering no explanation. Just that look in her eyes, the one I had never seen before. It was guilt, yes, but there was something else. A sense of resignation. Like she had already accepted what was happening, and I was the last one to catch on. I didn't know how long I walked for. The world around me seemed to blur, like I was moving through a dream. The city lights flickered in the distance, but they felt so far away, like they belonged to someone else's life. I was numb. I didn't know what I was doing or where I was going. All I could feel was the weight of the betrayal pressing down on me, crushing every breath I took. Eventually, I found myself standing in front of a bar. The neon sign buzzed in the cold air, the glow a strange comfort in the otherwise empty street. I didn't know why I stopped there. Maybe it was the pull of the darkened window, or maybe it was just the need for something, anything, to numb the pain. I pushed open the door without thinking. The inside was dim, filled with the hum of quiet conversations and the clink of glass. A few people sat at the bar, nursing drinks, their faces illuminated by the soft yellow light. The bartender glanced up at me as I entered, but his expression didn't change. He was used to people coming in for reasons they didn't talk about. I walked to an empty stool and sat down, ordering a drink without really knowing what I wanted. The burn of alcohol in my throat was almost comforting, a temporary escape from the chaos swirling in my mind. The bartender didn't ask questions. Nobody did. I wasn't looking for answers. I wasn't looking for anything except to forget, to lose myself in the fog of the night, just for a while. As I sat there, my mind kept going back to Elise and Charlie, the way they had looked at each other, the way Elise had tried to apologize, but the words felt hollow. I couldn't even remember the last time we had really talked, really connected. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I had been blind for so long. How many times had I ignored the signs? How many moments had I brushed off as nothing, convinced that our marriage was solid, that everything was fine? I had been living in a dream, a lie. I took another drink, letting the warmth spread through me, hoping it would numb the ache that had settled in my chest. But nothing helped. I couldn't escape the thoughts. I couldn't escape the truth. The truth that Elise had betrayed me, and that Charlie, my brother-in-law, had been the one she turned to. A voice interrupted my thoughts, pulling me back to the present. "You look like you've had a rough night." I turned to find a woman standing next to me, her eyes a little too knowing, a little too curious. Her hair was dark, messy, the kind of look that said she hadn't bothered to care about appearances. There was something raw about her, something that made me think she understood pain in a way most people didn't. I nodded without saying anything, staring into my drink. I wasn't in the mood for small talk, but she wasn't giving up. "You know," she said, leaning in slightly, "sometimes the best way to deal with shit is to talk about it. You can't bottle it up forever." I looked at her then, really looked at her. There was something about her eyes, the way she seemed to see right through me. I didn't know why I felt like she could understand. Maybe it was just the way she carried herself, so unapologetically raw. But something about her made me want to tell her everything. "Yeah," I muttered, a bitter laugh escaping me. "And what would you say if I told you my wife's been cheating on me? With my brother-in-law?" She didn't flinch. She just stared at me, as if she had been expecting this confession, as if she knew the words I was about to speak. "I'd say you're in deep shit," she replied, her voice low and almost sympathetic. "But you've got to face it. You can't outrun the truth." I didn't say anything to that. What was there to say? She was right. I couldn't outrun the truth. The truth that I had seen everything, and that now, I couldn't unsee it. I couldn't go back to a life where I didn't know what Elise and Charlie had done. "I'm sorry," I said finally, the words tasting foreign in my mouth. "I didn't mean to." "Don't apologize," she interrupted. "You're just trying to survive. I get it. But you won't survive if you don't deal with it. You won't survive if you keep running from what's right in front of you." I stared at her for a long moment. There was a sharpness in her eyes that unnerved me, but there was something else, too. Understanding. It was like she had been through the same thing, or something similar, and had come out the other side. "You're right," I said quietly, almost to myself. "But I don't know what to do." She smiled, a small, knowing smile. "You'll figure it out. But first, you've got to face them. You've got to face what's really happening before you can move on." Her words lingered in the air, like a weight pressing down on my chest. I wasn't sure if I was ready for it, if I could handle it, but deep down, I knew she was right. I couldn't run anymore. I couldn't hide. It was time to face the people who had betrayed me. It was time to face Elise, to face Charlie, and to finally find out the truth of what had really been going on behind my back. I spent the next hour sitting in that bar, sipping my drink as the world continued to spin around me. The woman who had spoken to me, she was right. I knew that. Every part of me had known it for a while, but I wasn't ready to face it. I wasn't ready to go back to Elise and Charlie, to the life I had built, and shatter it with the truth. I could feel the weight of the inevitable pressing down on me, suffocating me with every passing moment. But as the last of the alcohol faded, as the buzz began to wear off, something inside me snapped. I couldn't keep running. I couldn't stay numb forever. I had to go back, face them both, and ask the questions that were tearing me apart from the inside out. I couldn't keep pretending I didn't see what was happening. I couldn't let this lie fester and ruin everything. Not anymore. I threw some money on the counter, nodded to the bartender, and walked out of the bar into the cold night. The streets seemed quieter now, the hum of the city more distant. It was as though the world was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable. When I finally reached home, the house seemed so different, so silent. The lights were off in most of the rooms, but I could still see the faint glow from the living room, where the curtains were slightly parted. Elise and Charlie, they were in there. I could feel it. I stood outside for a long time, just staring at the house, trying to collect my thoughts, trying to find the courage to go inside and face them. I knew this moment would change everything. No matter how it went down, the truth would shatter whatever illusion of normalcy I had left. And I was terrified of what would happen next. What if I lost Elise forever? What if I couldn't repair the damage? What if, in confronting them, I destroyed the last of what we had. But in the end, there was only one way forward. I couldn't keep pretending I didn't see what I saw. So, I walked up to the front door, my hand trembling slightly as I reached for the handle. It felt like the hardest thing I had ever done. I stepped inside, the familiar creak of the door echoing through the hallway. The moment I entered, I heard voices coming from the living room. Elisa's laugh, Charlie's deep voice. It was as though nothing had changed, as though everything was normal. But I knew it wasn't. I knew I was about to face the truth head-on. I made my way toward the living room, my heart pounding in my chest. As I entered, I saw them sitting together on the couch, talking softly, just as they had been earlier that night. Elisa's smile faded when she saw me standing there in the doorway, her eyes widening slightly. Charlie, too, looked up, and for the first time since all of this started, I saw something in his eyes, something that wasn't quite as calm, something that looked almost guilty. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between us was heavy, thick with everything that had been left unsaid. I didn't know how to start, what to say. My breath caught in my throat, and I could feel the weight of the world pressing down on me. But I had to say something. Elise. Charlie. I began, my voice hoarse. We need to talk. The words hung in the air, and for a moment, neither of them moved. But then Elise stood up slowly, her eyes filled with something. Fear, guilt, regret. She took a hesitant step toward me, but I could see her hesitation. She didn't know what to say either. I know what's been going on. I continued, my voice more steady now, the anger and hurt building inside me. I saw you two earlier. I saw everything. Elisa's face went pale, and I saw her flinch. But instead of denying it, instead of trying to explain it away, she just stood there, silently. Charlie looked down, his hands clasped together in his lap, as if he were trying to make himself smaller, trying to avoid my gaze. He didn't say a word. He didn't even try to defend himself. And that hurt more than anything. Why? I finally asked, the word coming out almost like a plea. How long has this been going on? Was I that blind? Elise took a deep breath, her hands shaking as she reached for me. But I stepped back, not ready for her touch. Not after what I had seen, not after everything that had happened. I needed answers, not apologies. I didn't mean for this to happen, Julian, she said softly, her voice trembling. I never wanted to hurt you. It just happened. I don't know how. I don't know when it started, but it did. And I couldn't stop it. Her words were like a punch to the gut. I had always thought that if I ever found myself in this situation, I'd know exactly how to handle it. But in that moment, all I felt was confusion, pain, and betrayal. The woman I loved had been hiding this from me for God knows how long. And now I was supposed to just accept it? How long? I demanded again. How long have you and Charlie been? Whatever this is? Elise hesitated, glancing at Charlie, who still hadn't said a word. I don't know exactly, she finally admitted. It started out innocently enough. Just small things. A hug here, a touch there. But it got deeper. And I tried to stop it, Julian. I swear I did. But every time I tried to distance myself, it just pulled me back in. I looked at her, my chest tightening with every word. My own wife. The woman I had trusted. And yet she was standing here, telling me this. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I didn't know how to process it, how to make sense of it. Charlie finally spoke then, his voice quieter than I had ever heard it. I never wanted to hurt you, man. I swear. It just happened. I never planned for it. It's not like I wanted any of this. But it's the truth, and I can't deny it anymore. I looked at him, my eyes narrowed in disbelief. You don't get to apologize for this, Charlie. You don't get to just act like this is something that can be brushed off. You betrayed me. You both did. You're my family, my brother-in-law. And this is unforgivable. Elisa's face crumpled, tears filling her eyes as she reached out again. Please, Julian, I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I don't know how it got this far, but I swear, I never wanted to break you. But her apologies didn't reach me. Nothing she could say would ever make this okay. The life I had built with her was shattered. The trust we had, it was gone. And I didn't know how to get it back. I turned away from them both, feeling the weight of the truth settle in like a lead blanket. The man I had been, the husband I thought I was no longer standing in this room. In his place stood someone who was broken, unsure, lost. And for the first time, I didn't know who I was anymore. The room felt like it was closing in on me. Elise stood there, her eyes red and swollen with tears. Charlie still sitting on the couch, his shoulders hunched, a man broken by his own guilt. The weight of what had just unfolded hung between us like an invisible cloud, suffocating any attempt at clarity, any attempt at resolution. I had spent the last few days walking around in a haze, trying to deny what I knew was real. But now, it was all laid out in front of me. The truth was here, raw and unrelenting, and I couldn't escape it. I turned away from them, unable to bear the sight of their tearful faces. I didn't know what I expected from them. An apology, a confession, some explanation that would make this all make sense, but nothing they could say would fix what had been broken. I didn't know if I could ever look at either of them the same way again. I stepped toward the door, the cold air from outside brushing against my skin as if beckoning me. I needed space. I needed to be alone, to think, to try to piece together what had been shattered so suddenly. I didn't know what to do next, where to go from here. Everything I thought I knew about my life, about my marriage, was a lie. Elise, Charlie, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but the words felt like a betrayal in themselves. I can't do this. I can't stay here. Not like this. I turned the handle and pushed the door open, stepping outside into the night. The world felt quieter now, somehow emptier. The cold air cut through me, but I didn't feel it. I was numb, a stranger in my own skin, walking aimlessly down the street, letting the darkness swallow me. I couldn't think straight. My mind kept circling back to the same question. Why? Why had they done this? How could Elise, the woman I had given my heart to, betray me like this? And Charlie, how could he, someone I had trusted like a brother, do something so unforgivable? I didn't know how long I walked, where I was going, or even if I cared. The only thing I could focus on was the gut-wrenching pain that seemed to follow me, like a shadow that wouldn't let me go. I felt like I was drowning in it. There were so many unanswered questions, but the biggest one, the one that kept gnawing at me, was this. How had I not seen it coming? I had been blind. I had been so wrapped up in my own life, in my own routine, that I had ignored the signs. The late nights, the private whispers, the way Charlie would always show up just when I wasn't around. I'd brushed it all off as nothing, as coincidence. But now it was clear. All the signs had been there, and I had chosen to ignore them. The betrayal had been happening right under my nose, and I had been too trusting, too blind to see it. As I walked, my thoughts turned darker. What was I supposed to do now? Could I ever forgive them? Could I ever trust either of them again? I didn't know if I had it in me. Part of me wanted to lash out, to confront them, to make them feel the same pain I was feeling. But I knew that wouldn't change anything. It wouldn't fix the broken pieces of my heart. I ended up at a small park, the same one I had passed by 1,000 times, but had never stopped to really look at. The swings swayed gently in the wind, the sound of the chains creaking in the night air like some sort of ghostly reminder of how far my life had fallen. I sat down on one of the benches, my hands gripping the sides as if I could hold myself together. I thought about Elise and Charlie. I thought about the moments we had shared, the vacations, the dinners, the quiet evenings together. I thought about the life we had built, the promises we had made. But all of it felt like a distant memory now, like something that belonged to another version of myself, someone who didn't know the truth. I had so many questions, but no answers. What was I supposed to do now? Was it even possible to move on from this? Could I fix things? Could we fix things? I didn't know. As I sat there, lost in my thoughts, I heard the soft crunch of footsteps on the gravel behind me. I turned instinctively, and my stomach twisted as I saw Elise walking toward me. She had followed me. Of course she had. I didn't know if I was angry or relieved to see her. Part of me wanted her to leave, to let me be alone, but another part of me wanted to hear her say something, anything, that might make this all make sense. Elise, I said, my voice hoarse raw. What are you doing here? She stopped a few feet away, her expression a mixture of pain and hesitation. Her eyes were red from crying, and her hands were clenched into fists at her sides. I could see she was trying to hold herself together, but the cracks were showing. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but then closed it again, as if she didn't know where to start. I'm sorry, she said quietly, the words barely audible over the sound of the wind. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't know what to say. The apology didn't feel like enough. Nothing felt like enough anymore. I was lost in a sea of emotions, torn between the man I used to be, the man I wanted to be, and the broken man standing here in front of her. Why, Elise? I finally asked, my voice breaking. Why did you do it? How could you do this to me? To us? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked down, as though the weight of my question was too much for her to bear. When she spoke, her voice was shaky, her words tumbling out like she wasn't sure how to explain herself. I don't know, she said softly. I don't know how it happened. It wasn't planned. It just happened, and I couldn't stop it. I could feel the anger welling up inside me again. The hurt, the confusion, all of it bubbling to the surface. You couldn't stop it? That's your excuse? I asked, unable to keep the bitterness out of my voice. You couldn't stop it? What about me? What about everything we had? She looked up at me then, her eyes filled with tears. I never wanted to hurt you, Julian. I never wanted any of this. I don't know. I got lost, and I couldn't find my way back. The words hung between us, heavy with regret, but I didn't know if I could forgive her. I didn't know if I could ever look at her the same way again. I don't know if I can forgive you, Elise, I said quietly, my voice shaking with emotion. I don't know if I can trust you anymore. Her face crumpled at my words, and for a moment, I thought she might collapse. But she didn't. She stood there, her head bowed in defeat. I could feel the pain radiating off her, but it wasn't enough to make me change my mind. I know, she whispered, and for the first time, I saw her clearly, truly. She wasn't just the woman I had married. She wasn't the person I thought she was. She was a stranger to me now, just as I was to her. And as the silence stretched between us, I realized that the life I had known, the one I had clung to for so long, was gone. And there was nothing either of us could do to bring it back. The silence stretched between us for what felt like an eternity. The weight of the betrayal, the hurt, and the confusion hung in the air, suffocating every breath. Elise stood there, her eyes filled with remorse, her figure trembling with uncertainty. I could see the pain in her, but I also knew something else. A part of me, no matter how broken I was, still cared for her. I always would. But I wasn't the same person I had been before all of this. The trust we once had was shattered, and no matter how much I wanted to pretend otherwise, I knew that the road ahead would be hard. What I didn't know, though, was how it would end. Could we rebuild? Could we ever find our way back to each other? Or was this the point of no return? I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I was so tired of the pain, so tired of feeling lost. But I couldn't stay in this place forever. I needed to make a decision. Elise, I started, my voice a little steadier than before. I don't know what the future holds for us. I don't know if we can ever fix what's been broken. I paused, looking at her, really looking at her, for the first time in days. But I can't keep carrying this anger. I can't keep carrying all this pain without at least trying to heal. She looked up at me, hope flickering in her eyes, but there was a hesitation there, a fear of being rejected, of being left in the dark. I've hurt you more than I can ever explain, Julian, she whispered, her voice shaky. But I want to try. I want to fix this, if you'll let me. If you can find it in yourself to forgive me, to forgive us. My heart ached at the sincerity in her words. I could feel the rawness of her regret, the depth of her desire to make things right. It wasn't an easy thing to admit, but I realized something then. Forgiveness wasn't just about letting her off the hook. It was about freeing myself from the weight of this betrayal, from the anger and the bitterness that had been eating me alive. I couldn't let those emotions control me forever. I needed to let go if I was ever going to heal. I don't know if I can forgive you right now, I said softly, feeling the truth of my words. But I'm willing to try. I'm willing to see if we can rebuild, if we can take the first step toward healing together. She nodded, tears filling her eyes. But this time they weren't just tears of regret. They were tears of hope, of relief. Thank you, she whispered, and I saw the tension drain from her shoulders, the burden she'd been carrying finally beginning to lift. We both knew it wasn't going to be easy. Healing would take time, more time than either of us could predict. But standing there, in the quiet of the night, I realized that maybe, just maybe, there was a path forward. Not a perfect one, but one where we could try to rebuild what we had lost. A path where we could find our way back to trust, to understanding, and to love. I took one last look at her. This woman who had once been everything to me and still held a place in my heart. We'll take it one day at a time, okay? I said, my voice firm, but softer than before. But we're not giving up on each other. Not yet. She smiled through her tears, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I saw the woman I had married. The one I had fallen in love with. It wasn't perfect, but it was a beginning. I can live with that, she said, her voice steady now. We'll figure it out together. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Maybe that was all we needed. A chance to rebuild, one step at a time, one moment at a time. The road ahead would be difficult, and there would be days when it felt impossible, but for the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope. As I stood there beside her, I realized that life wasn't just about the moments when everything was perfect. It was about how you faced the darkness together and found your way back to the light. And in that moment, I knew that no matter how far we had fallen, we could rise again. Together.